Good morning, everybody. My name is Luis Silveira Rodrigues, and I'm the chair of this opening session. Welcome to Making Decarbonization Fair, a four-day conference organized by the Engager Cost Network, the Fuel Poverty Research Network, DECO, and SENS. You will hear more about these organizations later. We welcome more than 360 attendees for over 43 countries across 6 continents. The European Commission stated in its Green Deal communication that the continued decarbonization of the energy system is essential to achieve the climate goals set for 2030 and 50. It defined as targets the need for member states to review their integrated national energy and climate plans to ensure that the transition to clean energy involves and benefits consumers. Policymakers and regulators have in their hands the opportunity to turn consumers, the driver of this energy transition, into a more sustainable and neutral economy that benefits consumers through greater comfort, more sustainable solutions, and measures that enhance energy efficiency, as this is the only way to reduce the cost burden of energy bills and energy waste for households. Let me start by telling you a story, a real one. Almost 4 years ago, 2017, Portugal faced some of the worst wildfires we can remember. The first wave happened in the beginning of the summer and the second wave in October. This story is about these last ones. As often happens in the extreme situations, there was a wide solidarity movement, and naturally, DECO engaged on this. We directed our activities to a specific village, one of the most affected by the fires, Trechedo. It's a village in the center of Portugal and in the winter is quite cold. We arrived there 4 days after the fires. There was still smoke coming out the land and the images we saw were mainly in black. We worked there once or twice a month during 1 year. You must be asking yourselves, why is he talking about wildfires in a decarbonization conference? This story is not about the wildfires, but about what we found and what we learned while working at Trechedo. DECO led a team of young teenagers who went house by house to find which were the main needs of the population. They covered the whole village, and their work was crucial to guide the distribution of the goods donated. But they found more. They found that most of those people lived in extreme situations of energy poverty. Why? Most, if not all of them, because their houses were inefficient built or had no heating or cooling capacity. They had inefficient appliances, and several of them lived in very difficult economic situations. So you see, this is a vicious cycle. People spend too much on energy because their houses and or their appliances are inefficient, but they can't afford repairing their houses or changing their appliances for more efficient ones. What lessons did we learn? We learned that young people are the best to engage the population. We learned that young people are eager to give their time for causes. They want to be part of the solution. We learned that victims, consumers, need urgent advice. We also learned that to find solutions to break this vicious cycle, we need to engage all stakeholders. We learned that if we want an energy transition, consumers are the driver, and we acted accordingly. DECO's lessons in Trechedo meet the statistics. In Portugal, almost 20% of the Portuguese citizens recognize that they cannot afford to keep their homes adequately heated, a figure well above the average of 6.9% of the European population with the same dilemma. The reality with which DECO has been dealing when supporting consumers lies in the discovery that the majority of households find themselves in a situation of energy poverty. And this is not only because of the family's income. Inefficiently built residential blocks, urban areas with population density pressure, and old buildings with no heating or cooling capacity, use of inefficient appliances are responsible for higher costs of the energy, and finally, barriers to welfare living conditions. And this is even worse due to COVID-19 pandemic crisis, with even more people in Europe experiencing a vicious mix of high energy prices, inefficient homes, and low incomes. Furthermore, while the pandemic has considerably deepened the existing inequalities in access to energy, it also led to many people experiencing energy poverty for the first time in their lives. We've seen this in many countries, and we're seeing this now in Portugal. With this recent lockdown, millions of Portuguese consumers confined in their own energy inefficient habitats are in fact paying more for energy or experiencing thermal discomfort in order to prevent the increase of their energy bills. In Portugal, January was considered to be one of the coldest in recent years, which gives us some clues on what's coming in the next years due to climate change. Health problems may become more severe for already vulnerable consumers and lead to worsened well-being, ending in chronic diseases and fatal outcomes. Since 2019, DECO, with other consumer organizations from 9 member states, BEUC, and ADE Research, takes part on STEP, Solutions to Tackle Energy Poverty, to present a simple, innovative, and replicable model of measures to address energy poverty. Though this project will be later developed by my colleagues from BEUC, its aim will be to disseminate best practices and policy choices that can alleviate energy poverty and promote their replication in other EU countries, but also to help energy-poor consumers to save energy and improve their living standards. Within this project, my organization has recently opened an energy advice office to provide detailed personalized energy advice to consumers. We support consumers experiencing energy poverty to manage their energy consumption and improve their welfare and living standards, helping them to find the most appropriate solutions, particularly with regards to existing support mechanisms. We advise consumers on a more efficient energy consumption, explaining how this can help them save money, improve their health and well-being, and contribute to the energy transition. But on top of that, we need a strong commitment and ambitious action by all countries. The time to act is now, because by tackling energy poverty, we will make the decarbonization easier to withstand by the most vulnerable consumers, and thus making this process much more inclusive, simple, and smarter. We welcome the European Commission's plan to launch the so-called renovation wave that will roll out policies steering renovations in the residential sector to ensure that consumers have easy access to clear information and advice by skilled professionals, helping them identify the best solutions when renovating their homes. But this renovation will only be possible if it also includes, for example, equally measures for other consumers, especially those living in residential blocks or even in rented apartments, if the international context is also taken into account. We also welcome the Portuguese Resilience and Recovery Plan and the way it addresses energy poverty, but all of the building renovation measures will only be successful if they are inclusive, affordable, and transparent, given there is still a different range of barriers to individual investment, namely the complexity of the access to financing, and also the fact that most of the supporting schemes are based on a first-come, first-served basis, and only informed consumers and those with a higher purchasing power can apply to those funds in the first place. We need to include everyone on the energy transition. Today and the following days, this conference will be attended by those who can find the best ways to tackle the problem of energy poverty. These are not problems that can be solved by one magical solution. So, we need this network from policymakers to scientists, researchers, and members of the civil society to design new paths to mitigate this problem. Energy is an essential service, and we must make sure that everyone has access and can exercise their own right to energy. Back to what we learned at Teixeira. Consumers have a tremendous power, the power of choice. To make sure consumers make the right choices to meet the climate goals, we need leadership to plan and execute the necessary measures, engagement of all stakeholders, information to make the correct choices, accountability to make sure everyone complies, enforcement to convince those who do not comply. Let's make this change happen. Thank you. It is my pleasure now to introduce you to the Deputy Minister and State Secretary of Energy, Mr. João Galamba. Mr. Deputy Minister, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the invitation for this important event. Climate change and its impacts are especially serious in Portugal and demand us a collective and assertive response. Portugal has assumed its compromise to achieve carbon neutrality until 2050, and we want to position Portugal as a country in the leadership of decarbonization strategies and the fight against climate change. In our national energy plan, we assume that fighting energy poverty is at the center of our decarbonization strategies, and that we should correctly identify, characterize this phenomena, which is so serious in Portugal. The main decarbonization and action plans for Portugal for energy poverty are the residential sector. And we believe that, as was mentioned by all actors, that energy transition requires a just transition. So in Portugal, this means that we should pay a close attention to energy poverty, and especially to the residential sector. In the National Energy and Climate Plan, to fight energy poverty, we need to perfect our instruments to protect vulnerable clients, and also to improve, to take advantage of the renovation wave, and to put forward a set of policies to tackle the issue of buildings. We have presented our long-term renovation strategy. And our goal is to have a high stock of decarbonized buildings and high energy efficient buildings for new construction. But the main challenge is to renovate the existing stock of buildings. And so we've presented this strategy like a month ago. It is already approved. And now from that strategy, we will issue a set of policies to tackle the challenge. In that sense, and to fulfill our goals in the National Energy and Climate Plan, we are currently finalizing our national strategy for energy poverty. And our objective is to improve the diagnosis of the eligible of the people currently in energy poverty in Portugal. Basically, we are crossing income data and also building data from these consumers. We are currently developing indicators to correctly identify and tackle these issues. For this strategy to fulfill its main objective, to fight energy poverty and while protecting the most vulnerable consumers, integrating them actively in our energy transition, we'll need to adopt a set of policies. The first one, of course, to increase the energy efficiency of housing. And we want to put in place a set of policies, not only to improve the building construction itself, but also substituting and adopting more efficient equipment. So we'll use our national strategy to fight energy poverty to promote a deeper electrification of consumption, So we will support the switching equipments that move from natural gas to electricity. We also support the costs with energy, mainly electricity. We have a social tariff for vulnerable clients. We have more or less 800,000 clients that are under this support mechanism. Also, protecting the consumer in general, reinforcing access conditions to energy services, and also to protect vulnerable clients. We also want to use the opportunities that self-consumption, collective self-consumption, and energy communities can apport to fight energy poverty, and we believe that self-consumption and energy communities can play an important role in empowering these consumers. Of course, information, knowledge, and education are key. We need to, as much as possible, share knowledge and spread information for end users, but also for intermediate agencies that have an important role in supporting this process. We apart from the social tariff, which is a structural policy, we've also included an extraordinary support this winter to tackle extreme weather events. We've reduced the VAT tax rate, but not for all consumption levels. So we've tied the reduction in VAT for consumptions up to 100 kilowatt hour for a small family and 150 kilowatt hour for larger families. Last year, we initiated our policy of more sustainable buildings, which was a trial for the more robust program that we will implement during the Resilience and Recovery Program, for which we will have around 600 million to support building renovation. 300 million will be for residential, 200 million more or less to public administration, and around a little bit less than 100 million for service buildings. Of course, the funds that will be available for building renovation will have to be supplemented with normal private funds. So we're currently working with financial institutions in Portugal to align the practices not only of retail banks but of the Portuguese Investment Bank to provide funding to these sorts of investments, because taking into account the dimension of the challenge, we will never achieve our goals if we count on European funds only. So it's important to have European funds, national funds, and also the financial sector and our investment bank fully aligned with these objectives in our decarbonization policies in general, and of course for building renovation in particular. There is no reason for banks to give credit to buy houses and not participate in credit products for these types of interventions. And we believe that with the ongoing changing regulatory framework that will apply for the financial sector, mainly the sustainability taxonomy and also other regulatory obligations, that we will gradually see the traditional finance sector more active in these sorts of policies. Well, this is basically it. We are currently addressing many issues in this area. We're finalizing our resilience and recovery program, and we are preparing all policies and programs so that as soon as the money for the Recovery and Resilience Program is available, we can immediately start implementing the policies that we've designed. So our goal is to have everything ready, so it will not be, any delay will not be on our part. It is fully dependent on the availability of the European funds. Well, this is it. Thank you very much. I hope you have a nice and interesting conference in such an important theme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I have the pleasure now to introduce you Maria João Rodrigues, Technical Director of Innova, who will speak about Innova's work on energy poverty as part of Lisbon Green Capital. Maria João, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I welcome you all on the behalf of José Sá Fernandes, our Deputy Mayor for Environment, Climate and Energy and Green Structure. Last minute change, he could not be here, so I'm here with you today to present you some of the work that Lisbon has been doing on this very important issue of energy poverty. So we, as I will present later, we have an eradication objective for this problem in the city, and we wanted to do it inclusively, and this is the main theme of this presentation. So as you know, Lisbon was last year the European Green Capital, and this comes as a result of a long path already now of developing its strategy plans in this area and of course putting them in place. I would like to point out first of all our sustainable energy and climate action plan that was set up under the Covenant of Mayors. And by then, in 2018, we had already two very clear goals, one of decarbonizing the city by 2050, and another one of eradicating energy poverty. This goal was reinforced in our latest, I would say, action plan, it's climate action plan that was done under the C40 network, global networks of cities that are leading climate action worldwide. So these are our main goals. So align, of course, with what we have in the national context. We are have an ambition for 2050 of decarbonizing neutrality, carbon neutrality by 2050, and we want to reduce our emissions by 70% in 2030, having 2002 as a baseline. So these are ambitious objectives, and in line, as I was saying, we have the objective to eradicate energy poverty by 2050, and this is what we are working now. Of course, Lisbon is not alone, and what our Deputy Minister has said clearly is that this is a national strategy also, and what we have to do in the city is to complement our own tools with the tools that nationally we are being made available. And so we have several actions that we are looking at. First of all, the municipality has this ambition of leading by example, and this is something that pertains to all these actions to all the measures in the climate action plan in Lisbon. And as the municipality has a housing policy, we are looking at this housing policy in order to make it exemplary to other private agents. So this first measure that you see, to live in class A+, it's of course the energy certification within the energy certification system. Of course, as every other European country, we are now in a framework of net zero or nearly zero energy buildings. And the municipality has in place a program, the Affordable Rent Program, that is oriented towards vulnerable and not so vulnerable, at least a little bit upper, so medium class population that currently cannot have the means, financial means to live in the city, as the prices of housing are being very high. And so the municipality has this program. The first building will be in place hopefully in September in a very central part of the city. So these are not peripheral areas, these are very central parts of the city, and also, of course, leveraging urban renovation and new plans wherever possible. So one of the key aspects of the affordable rent program is that we are looking at very efficient houses, energy efficient houses. And so due to the new legislation on nearly zero energy buildings, so every building should be A class A, and should also provide 50% of the consumptions, the regulated consumption, by renewables. And what we are looking at is to go beyond what is the minimum required that is already very demanding, but we are looking at going a little bit further, and to, if not in every flat, because this is flat dependent, but to have a significant number of flats that are A+ flats. So this will mean that the flats will be very energy efficient with minimized needs for heating and cooling, but also we are providing centrally the heating system, so not the cooling. So we're looking at houses that most of the don't need any cooling mechanisms, active mechanisms, and we're looking at having centralized heating systems, and this will be both very efficient and will ensure that every flat has the heating needs fulfilled whenever the environmental conditions dictate so. This is one of the very key aspects of these buildings. Another one that also is very, very connected with this second area, that is the social solar tariff. We call it like that, and I'm not so sure it's going to be the final designation, but because we have, as our deputy minister already mentioned, we have this new framework for collective self-consumption based on renewables. And so we are looking at having centralized photovoltaic systems that will provide for some of the electricity that is needed for the heating systems. And I'm also talking about domestic hot water. And of course, I'm talking about electrifying consumption, another objective that Lisbon also has. And we are looking at providing most of the needs for this electricity with a solar photovoltaic solar system, but also to provide this as a community service. So whenever there's a surplus from these common needs for every resident, we are going to all the inhabitants, all the ones that want, because this is something that people can adhere or can choose not to adhere, but will benefit from electricity that is charged at, of course, a lower price than that's coming from the grid. We are looking now at the model, how to best divide this energy, how to best charge it, and to see whether or not we are piling up on the already existing social tariff that also was mentioned previously. Also very important, we have a very important stock, housing stock, social housing stock in Lisbon, with over 23,000 flats, buildings, sorry. And so we're looking at rehabilitating, energy rehabilitation of this social housing stock, and we have the objective of having it all intervened until 2030. So this is also very important. going to the private sector and residential private sector, Lisbon, a little bit aligned with also what DECO is doing. We are looking at having a Lisbon energy store where we can drive consumers from awareness to education capacitation to intervene in their own flats and buildings, and also support them in making the right choices and choosing the right suppliers and be sure that interventions are well done. And as well, combine this with informing and making available investment mechanisms that allow people to actually intervene. And we are setting up this store. We hopefully will have some news still this year. We are also looking at having, it's not well defined yet, but to have as a complementary measure with what we are doing in the country, a climate action fund that will support, will be a financing mechanism, locally based financing mechanism. And we are looking at ways of having not only those that can invest and are leveraged by this fund, but also to create conditions for those that cannot take the upfront investment and supporting them in any case to intervene. And finally, we're looking at contributing also to the knowledge of how to characterize energy poverty. We believe that, of course, we have a bill problem, we have comfort, thermal comfort problem, but we also have health problems. So we are looking at ways and working with important stakeholders in this area, some of them present here, to find the best ways to characterize and also to support knowledge in this sense by surveying our population. We are now with a survey mechanism almost ready to launch it still in the first semester. So these are the main action points in Lisbon. By now we are compiling it in a energy poverty strategy, although this is also included, of course, in the climate action plan. Thank you very much for your attention, and welcome, even if virtually, welcome to Lisbon.
Thank you, Maria João. Two very interesting interventions by the Deputy Minister and by Maria João Rodrigues, who told us, both of them told us what are some of the public and interventions on this area. And I have now the pleasure to introduce you Slavica Robic, Amy Ambrose, and João Pedro Gouveia, who will tell you more about Engager, the Fuel Poverty Research Network and SENSE. The floor is yours.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Hi, everybody. Great to see you all virtually. I would have loved to have the opportunity to take this nice welcome that we just received in the last speech in person in Portugal, but it is also great to see you all here via the screens. I'm Slavica Robic. I'm based in Croatia, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity here to present Engager Network, which was one of the co-organizers of this amazing event with so many participants. So Engager, the full name is European Energy Poverty Agenda Co-Creation and Knowledge Innovation, and it is a cost-funded action that has been going on for almost 3.5 years now, and it has actually 37 MC countries, so there are participants from 37 countries from not only Europe, but even wider globally, with 114 members and 8 observers. So as you can see, it is an enormous network of researchers, practitioners, and different institution representatives, all dedicated to alleviating energy poverty. The main aim of the network is actually kind of what is happening here at the conference is to put researchers, specialists, government representatives together to get them to know each other and to work together on finding solutions to alleviate energy poverty. And so Engager basically addresses three main questions. One is how we can better understand energy poverty. What are the conceptual and methodological complexities behind it? So as we know, it's very complex. We are talking about social science, energy policy, trying to get together different sides and find optimal solutions. And of course, the end goal is to find a way to overcome this problem. I would like this opportunity to invite all of the participants to join the ongoing activities. So first, I would like to mention, as we said, there is already 37 countries joined. There is always possibility for additional countries to join if you haven't already, and also for interested people from the countries who are already in our action, you can always request to join as either MC member or MC member substitute. But apart from that, I'm very happy to announce that Energy Rights Forum is happening from March 15th to 19th. It would be great for some of you to join it. There is also a call for the application for training school on mainstreaming innovative energy poverty metrics. Application deadline is March 5th, so very close, but it is fully funded participation, and it's a great opportunity for young researchers and for people interested to learn more about how to measure energy poverty. And there is an open, ongoing call for short-term scientific missions. So it basically means that it is open opportunity to get fully funded short-term research visits to some of the researchers from the COST network. It's a great opportunity, so I invite everybody to join it. It's a very short introduction. I don't want to keep you and take more of your time. I'm really looking forward to this event and to learn more about what is happening in the field of energy poverty and to hear all of the interesting speakers and panelists. And thank you very much for your attention.
I think it's over to me now, is that right? Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Ambrose. I'm the chair of the Fuel Poverty Research Network. And in my day job, I'm Professor of Energy Policy at the Centre for Regional Economic and Social Research at Sheffield Hallam University. So good morning from a very murky Sheffield, where it's allegedly the first day of spring here in the UK. I'd like to briefly welcome you to the conference on behalf of the Fuel Poverty Research Network, or FPRN as we're otherwise known, and our board of 8 trustees. So we're all very sad not to be able to be in Lisbon for this event, extremely sad when we look out the window at the weather today. But we are delighted with our inadvertent carbon saving approach. It's given us food for thought in terms of how we organise future events, I think. And we're also delighted about the fact that we can accommodate at least 4 times the number of attendees by going online. And I'm sure there are colleagues from around the world who've been able to participate in this event because it's online, but may not have made it to Portugal. So there are some real wins there, although we are, of course, disappointed not to be able to network in person. So on behalf of all the organisations that have been involved in putting this conference together, I'd like to just thank a few people for making this happen today, including first and foremost our colleagues at Engager. Thank you, Slavica, for explaining about the important work of Engager. This wouldn't have been possible at all without the funding that Engager put up for this event and for all the additional support and encouragement that they've offered in organising this. And special mention needs to go to Professor Stefan Buzarovsky in this regard, and we'll be hearing from Stefan in the closing plenary, I'm delighted to say. So a huge thanks must also go to our colleagues at SE2, who frankly perform miracles for us behind the scenes at relatively short notice. And they've enabled a truly interactive online event that we think is as close to the real thing as is possible at this point in time, and they'll continue, no doubt, to work their magic for us over the next 4 days, helping to run smoothly and also maximising opportunities to contribute to the discussion. So we'd also like to thank, obviously, the energy poverty research community worldwide who've taken the time to contribute to this event by contributing presentations for our online library, acting as panelists and also as participants, contributing to the debate and the discussion and the networking opportunities. And we can't wait to see how the next few days unfold. So hopefully I've just got a minute or two to tell you a bit about the Field Poverty Research Network for those of you that don't know us very well. I'm extremely proud of the FPRN. We've existed for around 5 years now, but in the last year, we've achieved a huge amount as an organisation. We've achieved charitable status. We've become a charitable incorporated organisation, which has opened up lots of possibilities for us. We've run our first small grants programme to enable early career researchers to pursue research in the field of energy poverty, and we'll be announcing the outcomes of that very, very soon. Indeed. And of course, we've contributed to this international coming together of practitioners and academics interested in alleviating energy poverty and understanding the links to decarbonisation, which are myriad and very complex, as the other speakers have introduced so well. So the FPRN exists to bring together and promote collaboration and knowledge exchange between researchers and practitioners working to understand and alleviate energy poverty. And we do this through 2 primary mechanisms. We do this through events like this one and smaller scale knowledge exchange events, and through funding research, as I previously described, and through, in more normal times, bursaries for the energy poverty research community to move around and collaborate. So I'll be speaking to you again in the closing plenary, and I really look forward then to telling you about a few ways that we propose to secure a really tangible legacy for this event. So it's not just the sort of event where you turn up, listen to some interesting presentations, get some ideas and then go away. We want you to be able to have tangible opportunities to develop the new collaborations and connections that you forge over the next 4 days. And I won't spoil that now, but I will come back to that in the closing plenary. I think we've got an absolutely amazing and very diverse programme lined up over the next 4 days. And I'm really proud that the programme doesn't shy away from the really difficult, thorny questions around decarbonisation and energy poverty. If I had to pick just a few things that I'm really, really looking forward to, I think today's a special day with the focus on Portugal throughout the day, as we've started to hear already, a country that's really putting a fair and green recovery at the very heart of its agenda for the presidency of the EU. And as we've heard, it has so many plans in place to address the interrelated challenges of addressing and adapting to the climate emergency and alleviating energy poverty. And it's so encouraging to hear the speakers acknowledging the links between the two. I'm also very much looking forward to this afternoon's interactive session on gender and energy poverty, and Wednesday's panel on vulnerability, amongst many, many other things, those things being particularly close to my heart at the moment. So thanks very much for taking the time for this conference when life's so topsy-turvy and unpredictable, and we hope you'll be richly rewarded for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. João Pedro, please.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Luís. So I'm João Pedro Gouveia. I'm a senior researcher at SENS at Nova University of Lisbon, and I'm happily hosting you at Lisbon. So bom dia and welcome. So SENS, I have a couple of words introducing SENS and our research for the last years. So SENS is a Center for Environmental and Sustainability Research at the Nova School of Science and Technology, University of Lisbon, Nova University of Lisbon. And SENS promotes interdisciplinary research in environmental science and engineering, focusing the interactions between human and ecological systems to promote sustainable development. SENS is part of a research branch of a wider organization, as I mentioned, including researchers, students, and staff from Nova School of Science and Technology. And it develops research and activities promoting not only research projects, but also outreach initiatives, training programs, collaborations with private and public organizations, as well as the dissemination of results and science and policy dialogues. So SENS research can unfold around 5 thematic areas. The first one, ecological economics and environmental management. Then another one where I belong on energy and climate. Another area on computation for sustainability. Another on bioresources and green technologies, and then the last one on sustainable water sanitation, waste, and resources recovery. So this is SENSE. At SENSE, we have pioneered the research on energy poverty in the country. So I'm proud of that. And we have been targeting research around the last 5 to 6 years, creating an important body of knowledge on the topic, interchanging experiences with international colleagues through dedicated projects, and actively participating in the Engager network. So in Portugal, we have been fueling the discussion in different forums, bringing the problem to the media attention and the policy agendas. Our research specifically have been focused on energy poverty metrics, addressing multi-scale assessments and supporting local to national scale policies. We have been also intertwining energy poverty with the knowledge from buildings energy efficiency, interlinks with positive energy districts, and climate change mitigation and adaptation discussions. I can say that through our work, we have been shedding the light on the problem at national and regional scales in Portugal, looking to it from different perspectives. So while developing novel assessment tools to better understand the main drivers of energy poverty at the different scales, in buildings, at different regions, and different climates within the country, and also trying to understand throughout the supply chain what can be the impact of potential solutions. So I would like to have just a brief understanding of how we started the conversation for building this conference. So this started early in November 2019, so kind of a long time ago, but with the plans of the conference to be happening in person in October 2020. But as already mentioned, the pandemic turning this initial event to an open to all online and interesting event was really challenging, and I'm like to thank also the support of the other co-hosts. And I feel that this conference is really timely in Portugal by multiple reasons. So the ongoing Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union in this semester, Portugal as one of the EU countries more vulnerable to energy poverty, both in winter and summer, an energy poverty mitigation strategy being developed, as mentioned by the Deputy Minister. And we have now several European projects starting to integrate Portuguese agents and entities in them. Also an important step this year, so the kickstart of the next phase of the EPOV, the EU Energy Poverty Observatory, now called EPA, the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, so trying to move from observation to action at the municipal scale, with us at SENSE as part of the coordination team. So you can hear more about that tomorrow in the session about Europe. So this is indeed an interesting time to have this conference partially focused in Portugal. We virtually hosting it in Lisbon. And for now, I would like to finish mentioning I'm pleased to welcome such a variety of speakers, of participants throughout the different days, coming from really different backgrounds and locations. So please join us throughout the different sessions today and the other days. At the next time slot session at 11:30 Lisbon and GMT time, we'll be focusing on Portugal research, where we'll have a really diverse set of speakers. So join us in a couple of hours. Thank you.
Thank you, João Pedro. We have now a time for questions and discussion, and I have already here some of the questions that were presented in the app. So there is this first question from Carolina Valente to Maria João Rodrigues. If possible, I'd like to hear more about the idea of the Lisbon Energy Store. It looks like a good way of increasing energy literacy and ensuring better deals, especially for those who are computer illiterate. Is this an initiative that includes energy retailers? Maria João, if you would like to answer, please.
Yes, I could answer that. So very, very happy to talk a little bit more about the energy store. So this is something that is included in a wider context within Lisbon, that is the Lisbon store, that is supporting all the citizens in a lot of different things, from urbanism to licensing to a lot of different aspects. And we are inserting this energy store in this logics. It will have in principle a physical establishment, this connected to the already existing places within the Lisbon store, but also a virtual place. And yes, we are ranging from having a strong action within literacy. This is something that we understand it's an enabler of action, of course, but also we are looking at having authorized lakes, we call it lakes of professionals that can implement energy efficiency measures, ranging from a lot of different aspects to professionals that can also help going deeper into the problems of a specific household by providing energy audits, and also having a lake of possible financing instruments and entities acting in this area. As was already mentioned, we believe that the financing system has a play here, and we want to develop namely with the commercial banking system, ways to be present and to help consumers to invest. I was asked if we are considering retailers. We are not. At the first instance, we are not considering having this lack of retailers. The retailers are already present in these Lisbon stores, and but we may revise our position if we find it important to include them within the logic of the energy store. We, of course, should provide for some assistance in for instance, changing the retailer, but this is already done by a lot of different entities, namely our regulator. Each provider, each retailer also has their own simulation tools online. So we don't want to invest in areas that are already being tackled by others. We want to invest in areas that are not covered by now. So if we think it's important later on, we will include them, but not by now. I don't know if I answered the questions from Carolina.
Thank you, Maria João. I think you did, but Carolina, feel free, please, if you want to ask any other question. We now have another question from Paulo, which is directed to any of the speakers. Do you consider that the strategies to tackle energy poverty should be addressed at an European level? I don't know which of the speakers wants to address, or several of them want to address this question about the European level to tackle the strategies for energy poverty.
I'd be happy to start and give my perspective. I believe that we do need European level policies and strategies, but then again, we also need a specific tailor-made solutions for each country, and then even below the country for each region and for each municipality. I think we need them on European level, because if we don't have strategies and measures on European level, then we likely don't have funding dedicated to research, to implementation European level. So long story short, I think we need them all. We need them from all the way top at EU and European level, and all the way down to municipal level, where there would be definitely some differences, because as we know, we cannot compare, for example, Portugal and Norway and have the same solutions implemented in those countries.
Thank you, Slavica. João Pedro, I think.
Yeah, I can follow up a bit on that. I agree with Slavica. So the work we have also been doing is trying to assess this diversity. So through Engager, for example, across the different countries, what can be the indicators to be used to compare or to distinguish the countries. So it's important to have a set of tools that everybody can use, but not exactly the same. So it's totally different for understanding of energy poverty coming, for example, from Poland or the UK to the Portuguese or the Spanish perspective. So the integration of knowledge from international networks and scholarship is really important to understand the problem at the different scales. But in my view, it's not really mandatory to have a common definition. So people took a long time to focus on definitions. So the definition kind of sets the scene for the work to be developed. So to be included, for example, on the strategies, on the national strategies, but it's also only a basis for targeting and for understanding how we can frame energy poverty in the countries, how to define the measures, indicators to better accomplish our results.
Thank you, João Pedro.
I would like also just to compliment and to say I fully agree with Silvika and João Pedro. And I will also like to focus here something that's so context dependent, as we are always looking very much to energy poverty as a hitting problem. And we in the southern countries, not only in the southern countries, but in the southern countries, we are now experiencing problems with the cooling problem, and this has different implications than the heating problem. And for instance, in Portugal last year we had 7 heat waves, one of which was in February. So we have to understand very well not only the problem of heating, but also this very emerging and persistent problem of cooling. And that has implications that go for people, their active population, more than what the heating problem that has a very strong impact on the elderly and on children. And now with the heating problem or cooling problem, we are looking at active population. So the pervasiveness of this problem will probably be higher than the heating problem. Of course, these are complementary, but I do believe we should have something at European level that would guide us all. But nationally, and even as Slavica said, even at municipal level, we'll have to look at specific problems and tackle them locally. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria João. We have another question, which is more a challenge. Do you believe that the pandemic has woken up governments on the need to find solutions to tackle energy poverty? So this is open to any speaker, of course.
I can start. I don't think so. So I think in Portugal was a nice coincidence, let's say, where the energy poverty discussion is rising at different forums. We have the Portuguese presidency. We are starting to build, for example, the energy poverty national strategy. So it's kind of a confluence of factors that kind of brought to the attention of the wider public and then to the government this problem recently. I think the pandemic kind of raised the question more on the citizens. So because in Portugal, we have this issue throughout the population of thermal comfort problems, not exactly only on the energy poor, so around the 20 or 30% of the population, but throughout the country population. And I think staying at home more time, people really understood the problems they had in their houses. So the inefficient, the problems of the windows, the lack of insulation, the poor or the lack of heating systems or inefficient, that turned out to be really the people understood the problem they had in their houses. So maybe they are now more alert. Not exactly the governments, but that's my view in the Portuguese context, let's say.
Thank you, João Pedro. Amy, you want to address this also?
Yes, please. Yeah, no, I'd really agree with what Joao's saying. Yeah, I don't think that actually the pandemic has thrust the spotlight onto energy poverty in the way it perhaps had the potential to. I think like many major agendas, the climate emergency, biodiversity crisis, energy poverty, all these interrelated issues have been pushed further down the agenda. Certainly, I feel like that's the case in the UK. So the Fuel Poverty Research Network did a small piece of research about 9 or 10 months ago, looking at the experiences of energy poor households in the UK during the lockdown, so the period of tightest restrictions on movement. And they're having a terrible time. You know, all of us are spending much more time in our homes. If you can't afford to heat your home to an adequate standard or cool your home to an adequate standard, that's obviously going to be much more difficult. We in the UK had a very, very warm spring. And one thing that came out of that research was that actually the temperature of the home doesn't necessarily keep pace with the temperature outside. And I think there were some assumptions that this warm spring meant that energy poverty wasn't going to be such a big issue as anticipated during the lockdown, but people were still reporting very cold homes that were difficult to heat, and they were adopting some ingenious coping solutions to deal with this, such as only spending time in the rooms where they were getting passive solar gain, spending as much time outside of the house in the sunshine as possible. But another issue that's come up is that a major coping strategy for energy poor households in the UK was spending time in third spaces like community centres, cafes, churches, you name it, libraries in particular, or even spending time on public transport. And of course, those options disappeared overnight. So there are so many reasons why the pandemic has really should really have pushed energy poverty up the agenda, and it really should be a priority for addressing during the pandemic as well as immediately afterwards. But there is some indication, there is some cause for hope. There's obviously the urgent need to rebuild economies. There's been rhetoric from governments around a green recovery, and hopefully that opens the door for the sort of major energy efficiency retrofitting program that we need.
Thank you, Amy. I must say that I'm also with Amy and João Pedro. I think it was not a woken up call, but I think probably it creates the momentum to deal with this, especially because if the consumers, if the population is more aware, can also demand more. But especially, I think it creates the momentum to tackle this problem, especially for the most vulnerable, for those that probably don't have the purchase power to invest, and for those that do live in very poor conditions, not only because of their income, but because of their houses. And I think that the pandemic turned this into a more urgent problem than it was before. But of course, and we saw that on Maria João's intervention, this energy poverty problem is being dealt for a long time. But probably now it's more urgent, and we need more quicker and more holistic solutions. So we now have another question, and I'm sorry if I'm not going to pronounce this name well. It's Mintu Nguyen. I'm not sure if it is the pronunciation, but the question is how transport poverty is included in energy poverty research, policy and action. I don't know which of the speakers want to address this. Slavika, please.
If I understood the question correctly, the question is, do we look at energy use for transport also as part of energy poverty situation? There has been some research, especially lately, published on that topic. So some researchers have been starting to see the correlation between transport energy on a household level and how it relates to the whole situation. The thing is, it's very hard to draw the line. Where do we say the boundary of energy used in a household is the energy that we observe? So some researchers claim that we also need to include the energy used for transport, which is nowadays also considered modern energy that everybody should have access to. And if you don't have enough funding to afford energy for transport, then you are probably also more socially isolated. Maybe you have difficulty accessing health services. So there is a lot of argumentation behind it, why some researchers say that we should incorporate also transport energy into the energy balance when we assess energy poverty. But then if we do that, it becomes also so much even more complicated, and it's already complicated a lot, even if we only observe the energy services that are used within the building where households live. But the answer is yes, some researchers are looking into it, but usually now the policies on EU level and on national levels don't usually target transport segment, at least to my knowledge.
Thank you, Slavica. I don't know if Amy, I think you want to address this also?
Not really address it, but just to flag up that there is a session dedicated to this issue. There's an interactive session on energy and transport poverty in Europe at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So tune in for that one.
Thank you, Amy. We have another question and another difficult name to pronounce. I think it's from Sim Gunay, and is addressed to João Pedro Gouveia. Can we interrelate energy poverty indicators? More specifically, do arrears on utility bills have a negative impact on the ability to keep home adequately warm? João Pedro?
Thank you for the question. So this is really context specific because, for example, the connection with these two indicators usually used for measuring as a proxy of energy poverty, in Portugal, they are really distinct. So when we are looking to the ability to keep homes adequately warm, Portugal is on the top countries this year. I think is the 5th with the highest population with unable to keep their houses warm. But when we look to the areas on utility bill, Portugal is really good. So it's kind of surprising how we can be so contrasting. And what's happening is in Portugal, we underconsume energy. That's my view on this. So there is that's why there is a huge problem of thermal comfort on the population. People understand that energy prices are high, incomes are low, and they prefer to use a couple of blankets and the sweater to be more comfortable and in their houses. So that means that, of course, when we are looking to the utility bills, we don't see that consumption coming. We also in Portugal use a lot of biomass in fireplaces. So this is also not portrayed in the statistics, in the official statistics and on the energy bill. So the combination of underspending on energy and the high use of biomass in fireplaces, for example, show that this nice results on the areas on utility bill. So it's a matter of better understanding the context that we are using indicators and how really we can understand them isolated, let's say, and how we can bring them together to make some correlations, either positive or negative.
Thank you, João Pedro. We have another question directed to any of the speakers. Do you think that governments are listening to researchers and science on this matter? Slavica, please.
I can start. I think it depends on the government. For start, but in general, when we talk about governments and decision making, they always have to make some trade-offs. So I would say that many governments do listen to researchers and science in general terms. So they do acknowledge the problem and they do want to find solutions, but each government has to make decision which trade-off they will make. Do they want to implement easier to implement measure? Do they want to implement cheaper measure? Do they want to implement measure which has more health benefits, which has more environmental benefits, etc.? Because no government has enough funding to provide the solution to everything, because there is a finite amount of money and you have to decide how to distribute it. So decisions are hard to make. But that said, also some governments should probably listen more to their researchers, So it's very, I think, individual from government to government. And when I say government, I'm talking again from local level all the way up to EU level types of governments. So it really depends, but we have to also understand when they are making decisions, there are always trade-offs to be made. And I think for me as a practitioner, what we were always trying to do when discussing with government is also to understand their side and to find a solution that provides the optimal measure that is possible and doable for the government with the knowledge and resources that they have at the moment, but that is giving maximum possible benefits at a given situation.
Thank you, Slavika. Any of the other speakers want to address this also? Jean Pedro, please.
Yeah, I can follow up on that. So I think that at least in Portugal, I have a positive experience on that. So we have been supporting cities, municipalities, regions, trying to understand the problem. So they are really connecting with us at the research side. We have also been working with the government on the national strategy on energy poverty. So I think there is this connection, but as Slavica was mentioning, it really depends also on the government, and really trying to also understand the difficulties of addressing energy poverty as a multidimensional issue coming from different perspectives. So it's not only a problem of energy, of the building stock, the links with health, of social problems. So this is really difficult, as I see it, also for the governments to tackle. So it's not easy. It requires a lot of funding. And even now with the pandemic, there is a lot of options where the governments can spend on. So it's really a trade-off and a wider understanding of what can be the most relevant impacts of the measures they are going to apply.
Thank you, João Pedro. Amy, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this from a slightly more practical point of view. I think there's a lot of onus on, there has to be some onus on governments to put in place mechanisms for communicating with the research community, and getting the best out of the work that they're doing, and feeding that into the policy development process. But I think by the same token, I'm speaking as an academic here, we don't always make it very easy for policy makers and policy influencers to engage with our work. We're very good at sharing our work with others in the academic community. In the way we publish our research in academic journals as our main form of output is a problem in that regard. You know, often those articles are not actually accessible to those who could perhaps use them to inform the policy development process. So can we find better ways of sharing our research with very busy policy developers? In the UK, certainly we have a very small team within government dealing with energy poverty, and with the best will in the world, they're going to find it very difficult to engage with all of the research coming out on energy poverty. And certainly we at the Fuel Poverty Research Network are working on ways at the moment in which we can help the energy poverty research community to get their findings in front of those at the fore of policy development.
Thank you, Amy. We have here another question from Paulo Fonseca. In Europe, we still don't have a definition for energy poverty. Should we concentrate on that definition or try to harmonize common indicators? I don't know which of you want to address this.
Well, I think this was already a bit touched on one of the early questions. So I think each local authority, each government should understand from the wider scope of indicators available and take experience from the other regions of the country or of Europe to frame the problem in their context.
Okay, thank you, João Pedro. And we have here another one, which is more general. What are your expectations for the upcoming days of the conference? I think this one is, any of you can address this. So who wants to start? Amy, please.
Yeah, I could start on that one. So I think, as I said in my introductory talk, we're hoping that have made this as interactive as possible. So my expectations are that this won't just be a sort of one-way communication of information over the next few days, that this will be a debate and a discussion, and that it will enable the presenters and the panelists to develop their research further and inspire those who are participating in other ways to take a different direction with their research and to look more closely at the interrelationships between energy poverty, climate emergency and decarbonisation. I think, as I also said, we want to also give you tangible mechanisms to build on the ideas and connections that you make over the next few days, and I'll outline those in the closing plenary. But certainly there will be a legacy from this event and spin-off opportunities in the future to come together again.
Thank you, Amy. Any of the other speakers wants to share about this? Okay, so I can tell on my part that looking at the geographically dispersion of the attendees, the conferences, the sessions that are planned, I think we must expect a lot and about this conference. And I'm hoping that at the end of the conference we have very interesting guidelines for the work of each of the organizations that are here, because this is so diverse. We have here stakeholders, we have here consumer organizations, we have here governments, public authorities, researchers, and all of those, I think that looking at the sessions, I think all of them would have important outcomes of this conference. So I have very high expectations for the upcoming days of the conference. And I don't see any other questions, so I want to thank all of you for your interest and participation. And I want to thank especially to my colleagues at this opening session and the organization team and staff that make it possible. Please now hear Amy about the exciting work you have had. Amy, please.
Okay, I realise everybody's been in listening mode for a long time now, but just a final few quick messages. So you might not be very familiar with the Hoover platform, but I think it's quite intuitive and easy to use. And I noticed actually some delegates have been using it in advance of the conference, which is great. But just a reminder to use the community board on the left-hand side. You can access that on the left-hand side menu to network and initiate discussions. Also a reminder that there's a huge number of really good quality video presentations that have been recorded by delegates in advance in our video library, and there are gaps in the programme which offer an opportunity to spend some time looking at those presentations. And then obviously please join the first panel session of the conference at 11:30, which is a further session focusing on energy poverty in Portugal. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. I'll be there with a coffee and a pastel de nata that I've ordered, especially in honour of our Portuguese colleagues. Okay, see you then.